um, would it have a memory? Would consciousness have a memory? Or is that something that's limited to the brain? Like, it's just purely a brain structure, which is also brings me to the idea of universal consciousness. It's like, does it have a memory, or is it just there? Like, it's just there observing or experiencing, but it's not actually retaining anything? I don't know. And I was also wondering, would this memory limit consciousness? In a sense, right? Does memory limit consciousness in a way? Like, let's say if consciousness doesn't have memory, is this limiting, or does it matter either way? Would we ever know? I don't know. I guess that depends if this whole idea of the mind actually exists, or if it actually exists beyond death. Or, I mean, if it is just purely something that's universal, then I guess it wouldn't really affect it. It just, these memories wouldn't be there because there's no brain attached to it once death is there. So yeah, and then I got into behavior, and basically I was saying, again, it's a mixture of consciousness and the brain to create behavior. So basically, does the consciousness use the brain to carry out desires? Because, okay, so you experience something and you internalize it through mechanisms in the brain, but how does your consciousness come into play with that? How does it interpret things? How does it experience things? Well, I guess I should say you. How do you personally experience things? And if it's, your consciousness that's guiding, desires, like not food desires, or bodily functional desires. I mean, desires, to be a better person, or a desire to travel, stuff like that. And does it use your body? Does it use your brain in a way to facilitate these behaviors? And I also went on to say experience helps to shape the brain, and how consciousness can use the brain to carry out its desires. So yeah, I mean, how does experience shape the brain, and how can consciousness use this? Because, I mean, for example, someone who does, has done jujitsu for 15 years, the wiring in their brain is going to be a bit differently. They're going to be more coordinated. They're going to have, the moves all memorized. And how does this shape experience, or how does this shape the consciousness of the person? Like, how does it shape the person's awareness of their surroundings when they're doing jiu-jitsu, compared to someone who's never done it and you put them in a room to try and do it? That's how I mean how, brain with respect to talents, or talents that have been acquired, like learning jiu-jitsu, how do they affect consciousness? And I was saying, okay, so both the brain and this, okay, there's this whole idea of everything's made up of energy. We're all energy, slow, fast, medium. There are different speeds that we're all moving at, that our atoms are moving at. And I was saying, is consciousness an energy in itself? The brain is also made up of energy. But what I was asking is, well, is consciousness the same type of energy, or is it a different type of energy? Or, yeah, like, okay, so the brain is like organic, material, earthy energy, and the mind is some other type of energy that this physical world isn't made of. I don't know. Yeah, so how, and then again back to, well, how does consciousness affect our behavior? It's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, if there are many, many different levels that we are not actually, fully aware of, I don't know how it would affect behavior. I mean, maybe that can partially explain why, you find yourself doing odd things or repeating things all the time, like mistakes. You keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and you're just like, why? Maybe that's you're unaware of a certain level of your consciousness that's making you do these things, maybe to make you face it and finally fix whatever it is. I don't know. I'm saying that a lot because I actually don't know. And yeah, I went on to, again, talking about brain abnormalities, like actual structural abnormalities. How does this affect behavior and consciousness? I mean, okay, so if you, let's say you damage, part of your frontal lobe, you end up with, let's say, no emotions, like the whole Phineas Gage thing, with a lack of empathy. You don't really have that much memory. Basically, well, you're kind of a dick, right? But let's say that wasn't you before. Let's say you had a horrible accident, and before you were a caring, nice person and really intelligent, and then all of a sudden this thing happened and you're the complete opposite. What does that mean? I mean, doesn't it kind of say something that the brain is what is controlling us, our behaviors, our, caringness and things like that? Because, I mean, that brings up a good point. Where does the mind or consciousness come into play? Because, I mean, if this kindness and loving and intelligence was, was you, and you are truly your consciousness, then why does this change once the structures in the brain change? So, I mean, maybe one way to explain it is that the brain and the consciousness are very, very linked together, and what we think the consciousness isn't actually what it is. I mean, okay, as in when it's, let's say, when it's attached to a brain, it forms us. We are here, and it makes you unique. It makes you you, especially with all your different experiences. They kind of work together, and it's some new structure. But when they're separated, the brain is just this robotic thing, and the consciousness is basically just not nothing, but it's there, but it's not us. It doesn't have your unique experiences or unique you per se. I mean, it has its, I guess, some of the attributes, but it's not what holds your caringness or your intelligence or, your other emotions. So maybe these emotional things are mostly bodily, mostly earthy. That, or when they're mixed together, that's what makes up everything. I don't really know. Yeah. Oh, 15 minutes. Yeah. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna try and move this along. And the brain. Okay, so basically I kind of went over what I wanted to talk about with regards to consciousness, behavior, and the mind versus brain argument. I think on my own, when I was thinking to myself, I raised some interesting questions that I'd like to think about more. I found that the discussions in the class were helpful in facilitating these thoughts. I mean, I would look back and I would think, okay, so this is interesting. We've got a whole flow of ideas, and it helped me come up with more ideas, and it just led me to more and more questions. I haven't solved anything, and I don't think I will. It'll probably just lead me to even more questions. I'm hopefully more new and interesting questions. And, maybe this, in a sense, is science, right? I mean, I'm not going to be able to make any truths or any predictions, but I'm going to come up with lots and lots of questions and just keep thinking. And maybe I'll be able to, discount some, saying, well, no, this isn't right, or this is right, or, hey, none of it's right. I don't know. yeah, so that's basically what I have for behavior and consciousness.